Welcome to the Manticore Expert Series. We're here to help you get more from the Manticore. We want to empower you to fully understand this phenomenal coin and treasure detector so that you're confident enough to customize it to your environment and your detecting style. Hello everyone, welcome to part one of the Manticore Expert Series. My name's Scott, I'm going to be guiding you through this series. Today's theme overall is don't listen to the internet. We're also going to be covering some stuff on sensitivity and recovery speed. But first of all, let's get into those internet settings. We are going to head over to Luke and Paul now, and they're going to show us an example of a machine which has been set up with some common internet settings. You'll hear as they slowly bring that machine back into line, they'll be reducing sensitivity, they'll be adjusting the recovery speed to a more sensible number, you will hear targets become clearer, and you will see a clearer visual display on the 2D ID screen. So let's head over and see what happens.
I've got my recovery speed on 2, sensitivity 35.
So you're running it really hot,
really
deep.
Really hot.
So Paul, I'm seeing you using really high sensitivity.
Very high, yes, you've got to.
Yeah, okay, but we're gonna first try a noise cancel to improve it. Maybe it will improve a little bit. So, we know we have a target below your coil, swing above it. So if you look at the screen, there is no clear indication. It's full of flakes and so we're gonna lower down your sensitivity. I suppose 21 was a good way to go over here. And if I look at your recovery, you have recovery of 2. I'm gonna bring it back to 5. So swing above the target now. That's a way better feedback. So you see straight away on the screen, you have an iron indication and you have a deep target which is leaning to the lower Ferris limits. So I think this is the way to go. There you go. A hell of a difference.
Wow, the internet wasn't right.
No, could happen.
So as you can see, high sensitivity and maximum sensitivity in particular is not always the best. Sometimes you need to adjust this for your ground conditions. We wouldn't advise running on 35 all the time. Think about where you are and adjust for the ground conditions, because you will actually miss more targets by being on maximum sensitivity all the time. Same with the recovery speed. You can see there that they dropped the recovery speed. 5 is the default recovery speed on the Manticore. It gets great depth at that rate. If you lower your recovery speed, you will get, or most of the time, you will more likely to get deeper targets, but the target separation that you lose will actually, unfortunately, you'll lose more targets than you gain by getting the depth. So just remember that in detecting, everything is a trade-off. If you're going to put your recovery super low to get that extra depth, you're going to lose target separation. If you're going to put your sensitivity to maximum, once again, target separation is just nowhere and you're just listening to too much of the soil. Paul is now going to demonstrate how to set the sensitivity on the Manticore. And what he's going to do that's really interesting is he's going to do it in 2 different locations, just to show you that it will be different, and it will be, if you want to optimize your sensitivity properly, you need to set it up for your environment. Don't just have the same number every time. So we're going to head over, we're going to do some land detecting, and then we're going to do some beach detecting. Let's see what he's found.
So welcome along, let's have a look at sensitivity. How high, how low do you go? Do you need to go maximum for maximum effect, or do you need to keep it quiet for maximum effect? So what we've got at the minute is a sensitivity of 17. We'll raise it up and see what the effects are on the ground. So at the minute we'll run up at 30. We'll go maximum and you can hear just by doing that over the ground. So if you've got your sensitivity too high, what you're hearing is what you think is signals everywhere. And if you try and pick out one in between all the noise, it's just near impossible. So what we'll do, we'll lower it right back down to where it stops chirping all the time. Still a little bit chirpy at 25. That's at 22, so now we can hear a clear target. So just in there, there's a target, so we can hear it nice and quiet. So if we raise it back up, we should lose that amongst all the chatter. So it's really nearly impossible with the sensitivity too high to actually hear what you're detecting. So the quieter your sensitivity for where you're detecting is going to work a lot better in your favour for hearing more targets and not trying to distinguish a false signal from a true target. So depending on your ground conditions, where you're detecting, you may find, I mean, this ground is wet through. You may find you're on a dry field, you can get your sensitivity a little bit higher. You may find in some places you will have to lower it to 14, 15, 16, which is still going to give you good results. You've got to go for performance of a depth in some places. So now we'll head off to another location and see how sensitivity is affected by different locations. So different locations, some of you may recognise it, some of you may not, but we're going to have a look again today at sensitivity. Now on the beach we've got water, we've got salt, brilliant conductor. So we could have a couple of options on which search mode we choose, but at the minute we're just going to run all terrain general because you get the stabiliser function, which is going to allow us to get the sensitivity up a bit. So at the minute all we're going to do is have a short swing. We can check the ferrous limits if we need to adjust them. You can see the other video on adjusting them, and we're just going to have a listen and see what happens to the sensitivity. So at the minute we're on 20, up to 29 it starts chirping, 27 it's comfortable, it's happy, it's quiet. What also we could do is just use a stabiliser, because on all terrain general you get the stabiliser function, whereas on the beach modes you don't get the stabiliser. We can just use a stabiliser just to lift it up to about 3 or 4 and it'll just stop any chirping. So we may even be able to get the sensitivity a little bit higher. So it's quite happy run a little bit higher with a little bit of stabiliser.
I'm just going to clarify the last part of the video there. Paul opted to use all-terrain general on the beach. The reason he did this is that the stabiliser function is enabled in all-terrain general, but it isn't in beach mode. So by using all-terrain general, he can engage the stabiliser and he can push his sensitivity a little bit higher. This is a little bit more advanced, so I just thought I'd explain that. And something to note as well that's quite interesting, on this session we had Mark, Luke and Paul detecting for a number of hours on the beach. What is interesting is all those 3 detectorists chose a different method, a different search mode and a different style of detecting. For example, Paul used all-terrain general so that he could use the stabiliser, really good tactic, whereas Luke opted for beach mode, which is obviously optimised for beach with a little bit less sensitivity anyway because of the saline conditions, whereas Mark opted for high conductors because of the type of targets that he was trying to find. So that just shows you that with a bit of knowledge you can experiment, you can do your own thing. There is not one setting on the Manticore to hit the beach. You do what you want to do. And once you understand the basics like recovery speed, sensitivity, once you're comfortable setting them, that's when you can start experimenting. In the last part of this video, we're going to be talking to Mark Lawrie, Minelab's General Manager of Engineering. He's going to be talking through the different search mode options that we have on the Manticore. And he's also going to be giving some good advice on how you can be sure that the changes you make to your detector are actually for the better when you're out on a session. Let's head there now. Hello, welcome. I'm here with Mark Lawrie, Minelab's GM of engineering, and we are going to talk about search modes on the Manticore. Search modes on the Manticore are great. There's a great variety of them. When we first had a conversation when the Manticore was launched, I asked for your advice. I said, what is the best way to run this machine?
And I think I said,
We want the general one, which is the main default from factory reset. We want that to just work for everyone.
so you should be able to just turn the machine on, run with the defaults, and for a good part of your metal detecting career, not change much.
And I think that's what people are finding. All-terrain general is something we're hearing often. I just run an all-terrain general and I make adjustments and I kind of stay there. You've obviously got loads of other modes as well. Have you got any other modes in particular that you like?
I mean, there's a mode for trash, there's a mode for going a bit deeper, so it depends a little bit if you're familiar with the area that you're targeting. Then you could probably move to some of the other modes that are more specific, but in general, just starting with that general mode, the very first one that's there when you power the machine on for the first time after you've purchased it, that's a great mode.
Sometimes at events, one thing we've seen is people coming away from the presets and making adjustments and generally for the better, but sometimes we find that people are getting quite far away and making so many adjustments that they're nowhere near.
I mean, that's fine in a sense that they've been doing some experimenting and their curiosity's led them down a certain path of trying some different things. What I would say is just periodically go in, reset that mode back to the factory defaults for that mode and just see how different it is and just check that you haven't lost some performance in some dimension.
So make sure you are making improvements.
Yeah, don't make a heap of changes and then not check that you've actually done it for the better. Because you might end up spending a number of detecting sessions wondering why you're not finding anything. It's maybe because you've accidentally masked out some good targets. Another thing you can do out in the field is if you're starting in all-terrain general and let's say you're starting some experiments of changing recovery speed or maybe the audio profile, you can actually switch to all-terrain fast, which is actually reasonably similar. It does have a different audio setting, but in terms of actual raw performance, it's a very similar mode. And so you could just switch between those two very quickly to know if you've gone too deep down a rabbit hole of changing all-terrain general.
So all-terrain general remain the same while you change the fast setting?
Or either or, just pick one that you're going to do your experiments on and then periodically check back with the other one. So if you're going over a target and it sounds really faint, just check it with the other one and maybe it's a bit stronger and you realise, oh, hang on, maybe adjusting the recovery speed to that extreme is actually losing me some depth, for example.
Cool, brilliant, thank you. Join us in the second episode of the Manticore Expert Series, where we will discuss recovery speed, the stabilizer and product updates. And please contact us with any questions you might have.